First off, I just wanted to take a moment to welcome you all on this rainy Portland day. And what a wonderful and bright space to be in, warm space. And how else could we be spending this rainy, dreary Saturday? So I'm happy to see you all. Those of you online, welcome and welcome, Lisa. Welcome back, Edward. And also to welcome all the friends that are here, familiar faces and new faces, people who are here for the first time. Just want to welcome you all. And maybe we just take a moment to acknowledge each other, say hello to your neighbors, people beside you, behind you, in front of you. So why don't we just take a moment to do that for those of you in the room and maybe on Zoom, just exchanging, making eye contact and just acknowledging you're here in a space and we're sharing this time together. It's a very intimate way to spend time together because we'll be in silence and then in a reflective space as well. And whatever brought you here, I just want to welcome you all. We have a few more people joining us on Zoom right now, so give them a minute to arrive. See. Welcome, Margaret. Hi, welcome. And Sean and Jude, welcome. So I'd like to first begin by sharing a little bit about our just our welcome statement. So at Pacific Northwest Meditation, we are honor and welcome each of you, whether you are just beginning or you've been walking on the path for years. Your present matters, and we're grateful that you're here and that you're here and you shape the space for us to practice together. And we want to welcome people of every age, ethnicity, cultural heritage, and religious background. We welcome people of all sexual orientations and gender identities, all socioeconomic groups, and all abilities. We also want to acknowledge the fullness and richness of your identity, including dimensions we may not have named aloud, and to honor the many intersecting ways we each experience the world. Sean asks if there's a social hour at 5. There is not today. It's just the first Saturday of the month. Yes. Um, so we gather here to practice and study, not just for our own awakening, but for the benefit of all beings in this living earth. We recognize the suffering caused by prejudice, power, privilege, and systems of oppression. And together we aspire to do no harm. We commit ourselves to dismantling barriers that create separation and suffering, knowing that our liberation is inseparably tied to the liberation of all. With mindfulness and loving kindness as our guides, we work to create a space where everyone feels respected, safe, and truly welcome. We recognize that this is a dynamic, evolving process that requires continual listening, learning, and care, especially toward voices that have been historically marginalized. Our shared leadership embraces the responsibility to foster policies and practices that support true inclusion. And we know that it takes the heartfelt engagement of every Sangha member to create and sustain a community that reflects the Dharma we aspire to embody. So I want to take a moment to just have us pause and acknowledge the indigenous peoples of this region whose lands we occupy. And this includes the Willamette, Clackamas, Multnomah, Tualatin, and the many tribes in Ban, now part of the Confederate Tribes of Grand Ronde. We recognize the Cowlitz, the Confederate Tribes of the Grand Ronde, and Siletz, and the many Native communities who have lived along the Willamette and Columbia rivers and throughout the Cascades. We want to honor all the indigenous people from the past, present, and future and offer our deep gratitude for their continued presence, wisdom, and resilience. So just taking a moment to acknowledge this land that we are sitting on, that our feet touches. And I'd like to also invite us to maintain a welcoming and respectful space with the following guidelines. So, out of care for those with sensitivities, we strive to be a scent-free space. So, please refrain from wearing scented products when attending in person. And for those with neurodiversities or seeking quietness, we offer a peaceful garden space. So, throughout the back door, there's also other rooms here that you can go into, or upstairs, or into the cafeteria if you need some quiet time. And please feel comfortable and welcome to speak up if you need any type of support. We are committed to cultivating a space of safety and inclusion. So racist, homophobic, transphobic, non-binary, exclusionary, ableist, or otherwise harmful language is not accepted. As a Sangha, we gently call each other in when something painful is said, supporting both protection and learning. And we aim to listen and speak with mindfulness and open hearts. So when we go into sharing, we invite you to introduce yourself using your pronouns as a practice of respect and inclusion for all gender identities. Pronouns are an important part of someone's expression and may include combinations like he, him, she, her, they, them, or others. And we acknowledge that mistakes happen, and we encourage compassion and forgiveness as we all learn together. And so today I want to introduce our guest teacher, and this is Nelly's third time back with Pacific Northwest Meditation. And welcome, Nelly, and thank you for saying yes to our invitation to be here. Yeah, and I wanted to share a little background about Nelly Kaufer. Nelly is the founder and lead teacher at Pine Street Sangha, based in Portland. Nelly was introduced to Vipassana meditation in 1978 on retreats taught by Ruth Dennison, and began teaching meditation to women soon thereafter. As before that, there were no female teachers in her community at that time. And she co-authored a women's guide to spiritual renewal. And she also completed a 2-year intensive teacher training and with Jason Siff. And Nelly is a psychotherapist in private practice, integrating Buddhist psychology into her clinical orientation. And she's been teaching continuing education workshops for mental health professionals for over 25 years. And Nelly, in 2023, co-authored a book named Reflective Meditation, Cultivating Curiosity and Kindness in the Buddhist Company. And today, in today's theme, we're looking at this notion of these two truths that coexist, where it's one is, it takes quite a bit of effort, and then on the other side, easy does it. So Nelly will go into that more in her Dharma talk, and following that, there'll be a 30-minute silent sit. And then for those of you who just joined after the sit, be prepared with pen and piece of paper, as we're going to do some writing. And then when we go into sharing, the recording will be turned off because Nelly requests that these sharings be kept confidential. So we'll turn off the recording then. But I'm very excited to be here and to have you back. So thank you. And I'll give you the mic here.
Welcome all. Things fall apart. Tread the path with care. Those are supposedly the last words of the Buddha. Now, we don't really know what the last words of the Buddha were. I mean, there was no written word. This is a hearsay, but I think those, and that's Stephen Batchelor's translation of his last words. So there's been lots of different translations, and you know how that goes. But I love those words. I think they're such a good guidepost. Things fall apart. Tread the path with care. So we're watching things falling apart a lot these days, aren't we? It's very relevant to our times. I think our democracy is falling apart. And, when I was thinking of giving this talk, I mean, this group founded itself on DEI principles, and obviously that too is falling apart, at least in public spaces. Of course, not here. It's going strong here. Wonderful. Um, but what does that really look like to tread the path with care? It's easy to say those words, right? But what does that look like? Because the path is not like one thing, and care is not like one thing. The path is different under different conditions, different circumstances, different times. And what really is care is different at different times, different circumstances. So I then started to think about, coupling it with this theme, like easy does it, and it takes a lot of effort, right? And that both gives us guidelines, but again, that's not simple. That's a real balancing act, right? Like that. And do I need to join audio here? Oh, I'm sorry. I got involved with technological stuff. That is another, takes a lot of effort. Again, shifts and changes, all of this, what's care, what's effort, what's easy does it, changes. I'm really talking about the teachings of dependent arising and conditionality. I'm talking about them in other languaging, but it's really that in this constantly shifting reality that we live in, it's not all one thing. It just keeps shifting and changing. And our capacities shift and change, right? And our life circumstances shift and change. Our internal motivations shift and change. We could go on and on from there. But I think we're here, at least that's why I practice, because there is the promise and also the actuality of getting some more clarity about what to do in the shifting, changing circumstances in which we live. And again, I think that things are shifting and changing a lot more than they've done other times in my life. I just have to open the news and something's shifted and something's changed. Yeah. Um, I was just at another event and I was talking to a friend and this is an aside from the Dharma talk, I suppose, but it's really what's on my mind. So you get to hear what's on my mind. But her daughter lives next to the ice facility. And she had to take her dog to the vet because of the fumes. And the school nearby closed down. This person worked in that school and it's closed down because the kids can't come to school. Who would have thunk it, her? Anyway. But that question is, what do we need to do in these shifting, changing? Where should I put my effort? When do I need to rest? When do I need to go more easy? It's complicated. I don't have an easy answer, and I don't think there is an easy answer. I think, again, it's situational, different for each of us. And of course, there's no perfection to be had in that. So what is the next step? What is the next step, both in our personal lives and our personal waking up some more? But what is the next steps in terms of actions we should be taking? Actions for ourselves and actions for this world we live in. And so really, I'm on the Eightfold Path now. I'm talking about the Eightfold Path. What is appropriate action? Again, I feel like it feels to me even more challenging than it's been at other times in my life to really determine that. So I'm going to read a little bit from Stephen Batchelor's book, most recent book. It's called Buddha, Socrates, and Us, Ethical Living in Uncertain Times. Now, I don't know if you all know who Stephen Batchelor is, but he's written a lot of books, like a lot of books, and he's comes from a secular Buddhist tradition, although he was a monk in his young years, very Tibetan monastic. He's been a monastic a lot, but in his old years, which he is in, he's a secular Buddhist. So I'm going to read about Gautama, which is the Buddha, and Socrates. This book is all about that. So Gautama and Socrates lived during turbulent, violent, and deeply uncertain times. Oh, we could just change that sentence. You and I lived during turbulent, violent, and deeply uncertain times. In China, India, Palestine, and Greece alike, philosophers and religious teachers emerged during this period to explore viable ways of responding to the novel situations in which people found themselves. The philosopher Karl Jaspers coined the term axial age to describe this fervent and creative moment in human history. Just as Gautama imagined the rebuilding of an ancient city governed by the principles of Dharma, so Plato's Socrates dreamed of a republic ruled by an enlightened elite who, in many ways, resembled an order of Buddhist monastics. I thought that was sort of interesting. Our current age of anxiety is no longer confined to specific cities, regions, or cultures, but extends across the entire surface of the earth. Perhaps we have already entered a second axial age. We might still be inspired by great figures of European and Asian antiquity, but to respond to the needs of a highly diverse global community may require the courage to re-examine our ancestral beliefs in order to think outside the confines of our comfort zones. Above all, I believe the challenges we face require the imagination to encompass the world in a single embrace, release the grips of oppositional thinking, and come to rest in the creative uncertainty needed to ask ourselves the deepest questions afresh. So that's what Stephen has to say. So if you go along with some of Stephen's views here, and by the way I teach, you never have to go along with any views. I really don't want you to. I want you to consider them for yourself. But if they resonated to some extent, then what he calls imagination, where does that guide us towards? And I want to say something. Stephen translates intention on the Eightfold Path as imagination. And I find that a very interesting translation, because really we can only intend what we can imagine, right? And so he translates it as imagination. So what does our imagination guide us towards? Again, I'm full of questions, right? Not full of answers. But what actions? What actions do we need to take care of ourselves, to restore ourselves, to the easy does it part of that slogan, shall we call it? But also, what do we really need to do? What can we really do to take care of this world we live in? And now, since Portland's in the spotlight, to take care of this city we live in, which is probably all that we really could do. So big questions, huh? Big questions. No easy answers. And not one thing, they'll be appropriate for each of us, and not one thing or one thing's, that doesn't work, does it? But you know what I'm saying. That will be appropriate for us at different times, different weeks, different times of the day, under different conditions. Again, we're back to that law of Anicca. Things shift and change. And our response to our response to all this needs to shift and change, will shift and change. And that's maybe where the easy does it comes in. We really need to get a better internal sense of what is too much effort. Just an aside, because you mentioned Ruth Dennison, she nicknamed me Too Much Effort. That was my nickname. And it was somewhat appropriate. It wasn't complimentary, but it was somewhat appropriate. So I had to learn a lot about easy does it, but other people, sort of by their predispositions, probably have to learn a lot about putting in more effort. Um, so, um, so I found through this period of time we're living in that my meditation has really helped me find some skillful directions. I found a lot of skillful directions about what to do, appropriate action, through allowing my thinking into my meditation. And that's one thing. I teach reflective meditation. It's a little off the mainstream. And we say thinking is good in meditation. And not only do we say thinking is good, but we say that if you allow your thinking into meditation over time, it will shift and change in the direction of becoming wiser. Not always, of course, because nothing is always, but over time, it does start to move in that direction. And I say that because people often think that what they're going to get in meditation is what's commonly called monkey mind. And I have a hard time with that because I've got a little monkey for my icon on here and I love monkeys. So, but nonetheless, my point was that thinking is really on the path. This is a path of wisdom. Wisdom involves thinking. And also at the same time, this is a path where we can get into some states of mind that are very quiet, peaceful, restorative, that really restore us. And that I see as the lovely, I can't find an English word for it. I can't find a word in another language. I can only move my hands. Interplay, maybe that's the word, of those two, of really thinking more wisely, more kindly, and also just getting a break, just restoring ourselves. So that's what I see that's what I see the path as that interplay. So that's my talk. But I'm going to talk now. I'm going to sort of shift and talk a little bit about how we meditate in this process that we'll do together. I don't think I recognize most of you, so you're probably new to reflective meditation. So I don't guide meditations. I don't guide meditations because I don't really know what you need at any moment in time in your meditation. I don't really know what's most skillful, what's going on in your mind, what would be most appropriate. By the way, also, Stephen, I like this, translates on the Eightfold Path rather than right or even skillful. He translated as appropriate. And I find that word quite useful. What is really appropriate? So I don't know what's appropriate for you in your meditation. So I won't guide you. And sometimes that's a little disconcerting to people who are used to guided meditation, that it gets less disconcerting if you were to do it over time. And you learn how to guide yourself. That's the point. You start to really get internal knowledge and internal database, if that metaphor works, for, oh, this is really a dead end. And I've been through this 50 times before and it hasn't gone anywhere. So I think I'll shift things. Or no, this is hard stuff. And it would really benefit me to look a little more deeply at it. And meditation is an opportunity for that. Or I could go on and on and on. So anyway, we'll meditate silently for 30 minutes. And then you'll jot down some notes. You don't have to write it down, but try it out. I encourage you to try it out, about what happened in your meditation. And people tend to go towards the content, which is fine, but there's maybe a deeper question in some ways, which is, how did you relate to that content? And and then there's all kinds of things you could write about. And people, when they get into these more, shall we say, meditative altered states, like they don't know how to write about that. I understand that it's very hard to find words for that, but you might be able to find just like a little word, like, oh, things seem smooth, or it was quiet, or it felt like my body was expansive, or it felt like I was really in touch with my breath, and it seemed so on and on, right? So you can just, if you can find even a little something, that's a lot, because we have you do this for, well, for many reasons, but two that I can think of immediately. Um, the first is you learn how to meditate by knowing how you meditate. Like if the teacher isn't going to tell you how to meditate, which in this approach we don't do, then you have to find out how to best meditate for yourself. And you find that out by seeing how you meditated and how it went. And of course, it won't go that way the next time, but over time, you start to really get a deeper sense of that. And the second reason is that you have first, things are easily forgotten. I have an easy time forgetting things in general, but in certain meditative states and coming out of meditation, it's harder to remember. So if we jot them down, we have notes for ourselves, but we also have notes because after I'm going to talk to a few of you. We'll see how it goes. I never know how it'll go, how long people will talk or who will want to talk. But I'll talk to a few of you about what happened in your meditation setting. So you'll have notes, and that'll help. I'm sure I've forgotten to say things. Anybody have questions or things I forgot? Really? I covered it all? Oh, posture. Thank you. Okay, so what we have to say about posture is be comfortable. And if that's sitting, lying, whatever, being on the couch, being on a chair, whatever is comfortable. And I know that goes against some instructions in meditation, which suggests that, you keep yourself in a more upright posture. And if that's comfortable, that's great. But the reason why we say be comfortable, well, it seems like a kind thing to say, but also because if you're more comfortable, you're going to be more relaxed. And if you're more relaxed, well, it helps the easy does it part. I don't think you need to put your effort into posture. That's a controversial in some sanghas. I don't think you have to put your effort into posture. I think I think it's better to put your effort into being with your inner experience, really being able to be with yourself. Maybe even hold yourself with a little kindness. I think that's a better use of your effort. You may think differently, but I get to put my opinions out now. Okay, well, anything else? I'm glad you brought up posture. I always forget things. I can't hear you. Ah, thank you. You're my helper. Okay, so we suggest closing your eyes, but if you have an eyes open meditation practice, then that's fine. The only reason we suggest closing your eyes is because it does give you more internal awareness when there's not so much sensory stimuli coming in, at least visual. It's just the visual that's you're sort of closing down that visual. So it's often easier. But again, if you are used to practicing with your eyes open, that's fine. Okay, good to go.